How about this one for snouts in the trough? I mean, as you know, too many public figures, too many politicians just can't help themselves. If taxpayers' money is on tap to help them out, they'll always go too far, take too much and have a lend of the rest of us. And it's the lefties, the so-called social justice warriors, who seem to do it most, or at least the hypocrisy stands out even more with them. So have a look at this one. There are two ministers in the New South Wales state Labor government, Joe Haylen and Rose Jackson, and they want to have lunch at a famous winery in the lovely Hunter Valley. And they want to take their husbands and a couple of other friends on this long, boozy lunch. But the trouble is, it's about an hour's drive from Haylen's beach house. So what would you or I do? Well, we'd either dip into our own pocket and pay for a taxi or an Uber or a hire car, or, God forbid, one of us would volunteer to be skipper and forsake the booze to drive everyone home. But Haylen instead summons a taxpayer-funded ministerial chauffeur-driven van for this private lunch. The driver spent all day driving up from south of Sydney to the beach house, to the restaurant, back to the beach house and home. The total cost to taxpayers of at least $750. The audacity of this, the entitlement, the complete disconnect between their place in the world and the people they represent. These two are the Transport Minister and the Housing Minister, two portfolios that impact directly on the cost of living of all the people who pay their wages. Yet they hit up taxpayers for this. Now, on board, as I mentioned, was Jackson's husband. He's a former Labor candidate, Sam Crosby, who now works for the Catholic charity St Vincent de Paul. He also appears on Sky News occasionally. I wonder what Vinnies think about all this. What a disgraceful episode. But Premier Chris Minns won't sack them.
Why won't you sack Joe Haylen and Rose Jackson for this extraordinary use of taxpayer money?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to sack the ministers. I appreciate that this is a major error and a big lapse of judgment. And I am confident and I'm hopeful, and I've told them both that I expect that they'll learn from this mistake and that they won't repeat it. The truth of the matter is that both of them are in big portfolios and that I believe we need continuity in those jobs. We still have to run these big agencies with complicated problems associated with them, and I need ministers who are got experience under their belt and focused on the job at hand. Now, I'm going to finish, and I'd only do that if I was confident that they'd learn from this error and they wouldn't repeat it again.
They think it's okay to use taxpayer funds for a jolly up in Newcastle or up in the Hunter Valley. It is clearly an abuse of taxpayer funds. It doesn't matter what the guidelines say. The Premier has admitted it's clearly inappropriate. Joe Haylen has admitted that it doesn't pass the pub test. And this is a test for Chris Minns. It's not just about Joe Haylen and Rose Jackson. It's about Chris Minns and his leadership as well. And it is an indictment, an appalling indictment of Chris Minns' leadership and his standards if he doesn't sack these ministers.
Doesn't pass the pub test. It doesn't even pass the winery restaurant test. And it's kind of a dog bites man sort of a story, isn't it? It's hardly earth-breaking news, politicians taking us for mugs and milking their perks. It's what we've come to expect, sadly. How long do you reckon you or I would remain in our job if we pulled an expenses rort like this?